All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope you don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host today, Julian Gill, admin on the FAQ message board, and joining us all the way from
Sweden.
That's right, Daniel Weeze. Good to see you again. Good to have you back on the show to talk some Kiss with us with a different perspective. Been looking forward to that. And of course, not to make Mark feel any less welcome, Mark from Canada.
Greetings.
Marcus Almighty, of course, and then the voice of reason, 69th Blizzard, Ken, sir. I'm honored. I had a very good chat with another Ken last week, and I'd like to thank everyone who gave our little solo podcast, our crossover. That was, of course, Ken Mills from Podkist, and I got together just to talk about what we knew about the first two discs on the Gene Simmons Vault. We played some samples and some music from my collection for the stuff that's not out there yet, and pondered whether that will actually be it. So thank you to everyone who gave that a listen. Also give a shout out to Talking Metal. They featured an article this week on the topic that we're going to talk about on Alive 2, which I was very happy that they were willing to run that. So thank you guys. What else in the realm of Kiss? Gene Simmons is in Japan currently, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning in Tokyo while we're recording this, so there's no chance of finding out anything about what's been going on there other than what some friends have been posting on Facebook. So exciting times for everyone. Mark, you've got some stuff happening in your world before we get into today's topic. What's going on? And I like your t-shirt, by the way.
Oh, yes. It's a very fine, comfortable t-shirt. I enjoy it very much. As far as what's going on with me, I just released the first single off the next record, the next Project Gemini record, which is going to be called A Brand New Day. The response was so good, and I thank everybody who, left their comments and left their opinions, and even the people that went ahead and bought the digital download of it. I thank everybody who did that. Even some people contributed slightly more, and I thank those people too. And like I mentioned in my post, every single penny that I get from this is going right back into the production of the new CD and vinyl. So it's not going to my pocket for beer or anything stupid like that. So now, as far as what else is going to happen, thanks to everybody who made all your comments about the first single. But on the 23rd of October, because of the good response, I will release one more song before the album comes out. So stay tuned for that. I will post soon what song that will be.
Awesome. So good news. And by the way, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Great music. Good continuation on from your first album. Your stuff is more fun to listen to than this, which I actually listened to this morning. Why am I showing you this? Just because I just happened to have it lying there. I have now listened to the complete catalog. So let's get into today's topic. And we are approaching the 40th anniversary of Kiss Alive 2. Well, however you want to call it. You want to just call it Alive 2? That's fine. I always call it Kiss Alive 2. But 40 years, Kiss's second live album. How does it hold up? What are the things that you like about it? What are the things you don't like about it? Where does it fit into your personal history? Let's get some just general thoughts off the top about the album and why you're interested in participating in the episode celebrating its 40th anniversary. Daniel.
Okay. Well, I started getting into Kiss back in '85, so this was something I had to rediscover a few years later. And I remember buying Alive 1, and I was really excited about that one. And I liked Alive 2 at first, but as time progressed, I've come to see a few flaws in the record, and I guess we'll talk about them. But still, Kiss Alive, it's even if it's not as good as Kiss Alive 1, it's better than most live albums.
Exactly. Mark, what about you, your overview?
Well, the reason why I was interested is because when I was a young lad, my older sister Jane, she I had a couple of friends in the apartment building, and she took me to one of her friends, and I remember seeing this imagery, which was the back of the Alive 2 cover on the guy's wall that he had. He had put up all the Kiss records on his wall, and I was always taken by that imagery. So Kiss Alive 2 is actually one of the first records that's the image right there. That's the first record that kind of was buried in my head when I saw Kiss. It was kind of my introduction to Kiss. It wasn't my first album that I got from Kiss, but I remember that was probably the very first imagery I saw of Kiss when I was young.
And my story, I'm going to make Ken wait because he's got the best one of us all here. So, when I was getting into the band in 85, 86, that early period, I don't remember what order this one came into my experience, but I was buying the albums back then kind of on a weekly basis, maybe getting one or two albums. I don't remember. And I started off with the ones that had more songs in them. So Alive 2 with Alive and Double Platinum were amongst the first. I assume they would have been. But I was always kind of drawn to it by that picture of Gene Simmons on there. And for me, that just remains a completely iconic picture. I don't know how real it is. I look forward to Ross maybe going into a little bit more detail about where all these pictures on the album cover came from in his book Magic when that's published, because there's just something very weird about it. It's almost like someone's thrown a bucket of glycerin on him. I mean, he's like shiny in the wrong places. I don't think I've ever seen another picture of him in concert that actually looks like that. That he's in that condition, that state. I mean, it really is. It's a great look. It's just the expression on his face is like me on Monday morning. I have to go to work. So more than anything, it was a great introduction to kind of a little bit more of the catalog, and again, a very good chunk of the catalog plus the new songs. So again, it was just a matter of me getting to get as much bang for my dollar as I could at that point. Ken, your overview and story on that.
Well, my overview is, it's a sentimental favorite of mine because it was my first Kiss album that I bought. So, and then I've told the story that I rode down my bike to the drugstore and picked it up there. And the deal is, things I really remember about this, and this is the actual one I bought. So I still have it.
Wow, you still actually have the very first Kiss record you bought.
This is my first record I bought. This is the very first one. So
in great shape.
I kept it, Yeah, not too bad. Pretty good shape. So I just, again, a friend of mine had played me Rock and Roll Over, a little bit Rock and Roll Over, and I okay, this is something different. This is something cool. So shortly after that, and it's 77, we went down and I bought this album. And the thing of what's funny about this album is, first of all, is when first listening to it, I didn't know who was singing what. Because, you just get into a new band. I didn't know who was singing, Detroit Rock City or Calling Dr. Love. I just okay, well, he must be singing this one. And then I was looking at the song, the names who wrote the songs. I thought, okay, this guy probably is the person singing that. But then I had to identify, okay, which one is Gene Simmons, which one's Paul Stanley. I just remembered, man, I don't know who's singing, but, this is good stuff, and it was rocking. I enjoyed it. And the other thing about it, too, this album is I hadn't seen them yet either, but it made me want to see them more based on what I was hearing. And plus, when I saw this center, fold up, oh my God, I could only imagine what the concert was like, and hearing the bombs go off on the live record and that kind of thing is just, it got me very excited about it. So it's a sentimental favorite to me. I rank it up there with, it's different. Of course, Alive is pretty much known as the main, Kiss's best performance live on record, maybe other than Unplugged, right? But this is close to it. It's close.
That's a great story. Did you use your tattoos?
I'll tell you, yeah, I used it. I was looking for the tattoos. I think I have them in somewhere else, but I remember cutting out one tattoo which was the rose, because on Halloween, my friends and I didn't use the tattoo. I gave it to my friend who was going to be Paul Stanley, and we put it on his shoulder for when we went out and celebrated Halloween. I did his makeup for him too, for Paul. So yeah, use that. The booklet, it's cut up a little bit. I pull it out, it's cut up because I had some of it hanging on my walls. I took anything I found at Kiss Pictures from that, and then 16 magazine, etc. I was starting to collect and put things on my wall plaster with anything Kiss, posters and so on. So yeah, tattoos. I didn't use them on myself. I just used one, so I ruined that one thing. But I have other copies now, and I have multiples of those tattoos.
Yeah, you've got a few copies of Alive 2 now, I believe, as you've fallen into the gravitational pull of the collecting. The addiction. Daniel, when you measure up Alive 2 to other live albums in the Kiss catalog, where does it kind of fall for you?
Well, I come from a different place than Ken. Kiss Alive 3 came out when I was ripe for the Kiss mania, and to this day, even though Alive 3 has been thrashed on this show, that to me, a few songs from there I really enjoy, like I Was Made for Loving You, never sounded better to me, and Creatures of the Night, a great live version, and so on and so on. But Alive 2, I don't know, there are a few problems that bugs me.
Yeah. It's not perfect.
The first and main problem to me is, as I grew older and came to know what a Kiss concert was, what kind of songs they started with and what kind of songs they ended with, and all in between. It's not really a Kiss concert, While listening to Alive 1, it's like being at the concert, they start off with Deuce, Strutter, and end it off in style. But Alive 2 ends with Shout It Out Loud, I think. I don't know if they ever ended with Shout It Out Loud. So when listening to it now, it doesn't feel like a live concert, the way Alive 1 does, and to some extent Alive 3. So that's the main problem for me. I enjoy a few of the songs, like God of Thunder, I think is a great version. Maybe a few others, like I have to think about it. Is there any more songs that I like from that album? Yeah, I Stole Your Love, I think is a great version as well. But other than that, the problem was that when you heard Kiss Alive 1, each and every song sounded better than they did on the studio albums,
Wow.
You had, Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Dress to Kill. All great albums, but they sounded tougher, rougher, and better on Kiss Alive 1. Then you had Destroyer, Love Gun, and Rock and Roll Over. To me, 3 albums that sound pretty good. And when you heard the live versions, sometimes you felt that the studio versions were better. And that was a feeling I never had when I listened to Alive 1. It was like it was a pumped up album. Every song sounded better than I had ever heard it before. So, of course, it was harder for Alive 2 to be groundbreaking. But there's a few songs that kicks ass, For example, God of Thunder, I think, is a great version. And another problem I feel is the drum sound. I don't know. Mike is the musician here, but something happened from the drums. The drum sound on Alive 1 is like thunderous, and on Alive 2 it's like listen to Metallica's album from 2001 or
Saint
that
Anger,
album.
Saint Anger.
Yeah. I don't like the snare sound, and it sounds kind of wimpy, unfortunately. But it's Kiss at the height of their power, but somehow I don't really think they managed to capture it. But I understand Ken, if it was his first album, you'll love it forever. And the art on the album is fantastic, even though they managed to get a whole lot of great pictures on that album. But the cover, I don't know. We have to talk about that. They could have done something more there.
Yep, without a doubt. Ken, what about you?
Yeah, I understand where Daniel's coming from, where the the sound is not the greatest. The live audience is it can be annoying, but you got to put that aside and try not to focus on that. Piped in. The other thing is, yeah, I understand too that live, the first three albums weren't the best produced, especially Hotter Than Hell albums. It didn't really capture Kiss, properly on vinyl until Rock and Roll Over, right? But unfortunately, the sound on Kiss Alive 2 wasn't quite up to Rock and Roll Over, kind of capturing that kind of sound, live sound, or even keeping with the first Alive 1 sound, probably would have been a better thing to do. Now, as far as the song selection, as Daniel was saying, it doesn't feel like a Kiss concert. Well, they couldn't really do it because they were trying to keep the same thing that they did with Alive 1. They just chose the best songs from those first three albums, and they pretty much sequenced like they would in a live concert, but they didn't want to redo any of those songs on Alive 2, so they couldn't really sequence it as a concert would go, because there were other songs intermixed with the rest. There was stuff from Alive 1, right?
That's correct, but you don't see that as a problem.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a problem because of what they were trying to do. What they did is they succeeded in eliminating. I mean, let's put it this way: they would have had to record Alive 2 live without doing any other, Alive 1 songs basically in it. Do a show that did not have any of the first three albums in it. They could have done one show and said, we're just going to play our last three albums, songs from there. That would have worked, and they could have, made a concert out of it. Unfortunately, they had to record some songs, a couple songs in the studio, right? Hard Luck Women, for instance. Even though they had performed it a few times, maybe live, it wasn't used. They did that, in the studio or on the stage, like in a rehearsal or something. But
sound check.
It's sound check, and Julian probably knows more about that. So those are I understand what they were doing, and I'm okay with it from that standpoint. I understand what happened.
But did you recognize in 1977, when you first bought it, that was not a real Kiss show? Did you, Daniel?
No,
Daniel, same question
exactly.
for you in 1985, and for me, I didn't know squat, and some would say you still don't.
I thought it was a live show from beginning to end. So I took it as at face value of what it was. What I was hearing is, this is the concert. This is the next song. This is the next song. This is Paul Stanley saying something about the next song. It's going. So I felt, okay, this must be what a Kiss concert is. So I thought, okay, yeah, this is a Kiss concert.
Yeah. So
I didn't understand it either, bro. But as I was saying in the beginning of the show, as time went on, I started to see the cracks.
Oh, absolutely, and it's the same for me. That you get to a point that here they are. You get into collecting, you start building up more knowledge, you start buying some bootlegs, and you suddenly you get educated as a fan and as a collector that this is not a real Kiss show. This is completely basically fake. With the one thing that's always bothered me about Alive 2 is the audience track. It, to me, ruins the listening experience, and I don't listen to Kiss Alive 2 very often now at all. It's just, there are bootlegs that are superior for my taste that I'd much rather listen to. I do not need to hear Tomorrow and Tonight live just so that they can have 5 songs from Love Gun on the live album. It's just one of those things. I do not care about that song. I do not like that song particularly. You know, it's okay. It's an anthem. It's happy. It's crappy. It makes me want to punch a kitten. But, you know, it's just not something that I need. Mark, you know, what we were talking to Daniel and Ken about, you know, what's your opinion on the album from that perspective?
Well, when I first heard it, you know, obviously I was a lot younger, and back then when I was not as learned in the production things as I am now, then the ignorance was bliss then, because it was just, to me, a live record that Kiss made. And the only thing that right away stood out to me, and I didn't understand why it was happening or whatever, was I was a big listener on headphones, even when I was young. And I remember when I first bought Alive 2, and I put it on. Well, actually, my sister had it, and I put it on. It started to hurt my ears. Like, just the audience was so shrilly and loud. I was like, oh, God. Like, after a while, it just was hard to listen to it. And Alive 1 was not like that. It was a lot warmer sounding. The audience was mixed in a lot better. Even the explosions in Alive 1 sounded really full and really powerful. Whereas if you hear, like, those kind of things on Alive 2, everything just sounds so top-endy and like, ooh, like, you know, you're just looking for the cotton balls to shove into your ears after a while. But, you know, as you get older and you start learning more things about music and how it's done and stuff like that, like you said, you start learning about the cracks and why these things happen. And Alive 2, to me, is sort of one of those things that was a missed opportunity, because number one, I understand what they did with the set list, but to me, it still never made sense. I wouldn't have had no trouble hearing some of the same songs again, just so that they had the flow of an actual concert, you know. And learning some of the things that I've learned through time, like how they rented a remote truck that had two 24-track machines in it. They had all the capacity in the world to make this a really good recording. They could have really isolated the audience better. They could have isolated everything better, and it still turned out really, really just thin, you know. And it really boggles the mind to me, because as you get more popular, you have access to more money, better equipment. Like if you look at the drum set, for example, that Peter had for Alive 1, as opposed to the drum kit he had for this tour, it was miles better. It should have sounded miles better, yet it didn't. I thought the drum set sounded much better on Alive 1, and maybe that was down to the microphones, because I've always said that the way they mic'd the drum kit on Alive 1 sounded really fantastic. It had a special sound to it when he plays those drums, and that just wasn't captured on Alive 2. They started doing a lot of underneath the tom miking, I noticed, on Alive 2, and they never did that on Alive 1. They did it more on the top of the skins, which gives it a different tone as well. So I just think that a lot of things were missed. They could have made Alive 2 just as good, if not better, if they would have maybe thought about those things and kept it that way. Just from a recording perspective, I really think that it could have been a good record, but I just think that some of the techniques that they used to record Alive 1 were better, and the album turned out better for it.
And that's one of the things that is kind of interesting, that going into this project, why didn't they just completely record it the same way they had done Alive? They knew exactly what they re-recorded on the first album.
Yeah, but isn't it very common with Kiss, you know, Creatures of the Night drum sound? What happened? Asylum, Animalize, where did the drum sound go? They seem to be lost when it comes to, you know, holding on to great sound. It's common in Kiss history.
Right, but, you know, again, like Mark said, with having the 224 tracks, they could have mic'd the heck out of Peter. They knew they were going to re-record Paul right down to his raps. They were going to re-record Gene right down to his growls. And Ace would be here and there re-recorded where necessary. So the foundation of the Alive album is the drums. because so much work was done on top of that original, performance that they did keep. They should have just approached it from that point of view. That, well, we know we're only really going to be keeping the drums, so let's make sure we get all the drums captured from the 3 shows, and then since we're going to go in somewhere else and re-record the rest of you, we'll just do it the same kind of organic way. Maybe it's just overthinking it and in a revisionist kind of perspective, that when they're living it, they're kind of saying, well, maybe we don't want to do all that again. Maybe this time we could really record a live album live, and all our jumping around and humping each other on stage isn't going to be noticeable on the recording. So, wrong, right?
Yeah.
So, Mark, I want to go back to you for a question, and that is, your love of a certain producer is well known on this show, and I tweak you every opportunity I get on it. So, rather than doing that today, I'm not even going to mention that person's name. I want to know from you, how do you like the material that was sourced from Destroyer on Alive 2 compared to how it sounds on that album that you're not a great fan of the production of? That's the one thing that's really been kind of burning for me to ask you.
Well, and I think I kind of touched base on this before, is that my main problem with the man in question was what he did with the songs in the studio capacity. And I've always thought that those songs in a live situation came across as much stronger, much more raw, much more the way I would have expected to hear these songs. To me, Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World, even God of Thunder, they are made to be played live, and they sound 100,000 times better to my ears in a live capacity, and they even sound better to me on a live too. And I have to say that I agree with Daniel. I think that the God of Thunder on Alive 2 is probably one of the more standout versions of that song.
All right, so that's fair enough. So let's compare apples and oranges in this case. On Alive, you start off with Deuce and Strutter. That is an incredible 1-2 punch from the band's catalog. Yeah, one. If I listen to a live album, I don't listen to Alive 3, which was my live album. I listen to Alive. But on this one, you've got Detroit Rock City into King of the Nighttime World. Good 1-2 punch, Ken?
Yeah, it is a very good 1-2 punch. It's probably one of the better, better parts of this, Alive 2 album is that 1-2 punch right there. So, yeah, that works for me. I feels that up to that point, it feels live to me. Feels like it could have been a start of a show with those 2 songs. So I think it's a good 1-2 punch.
Daniel.
Yeah, I agree. They used King of the Nighttime World as an opener at the last, shows, the last tours they did as a non-makeup band in Australia and Japan. I think they started with the King of the Nighttime World. And Detroit Rock City has at times been an opener as well. So that's a good 1-2 punch. However, you have to remember that this was released as an LP, and when you listen to the other side, there's a problem. You have this great starter in "I Stole Your Love." Fuck. Am I still with you? Yeah.
Yeah, you're still.
You froze up on me. Okay. You have "I Stole Your Love," and then isn't it Beth, the second one on the other side? And that's just crazy. They used that one over there. Yeah. But King of the Nighttime World, isn't it? Am I correct? Yeah.
Okay. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So that's just, you feel like "I Stole Your Love." It's like one of the greatest versions ever. And then Beth, which
to drop off,
has always been a stinker. But they could have used anything else from that side, like "I Want You" or "Shout Out Loud" or "God of Thunder" as the second track. You have to remember that back in the day, you needed to start off each side in a interesting way, and I think Beth was misplaced, But King of the Nighttime World and Detroit Rock City as a start, that's always great.
Mark.
Yeah, I have no.
Space Ace.
It's actually Well, I mean, I think it's actually probably an example again of what I was saying before, that in that raw live capacity, these songs I think come across better. I mean, the start of King of the Nighttime World is great. The feedback on that guitar is just fantastic. That's the way it should have sounded.
And the latter of those songs is, of course, one of the big mysteries still remaining, is where that was recorded. It was not performed during the Love Gun tour. I don't think it was even still in this. It had been dropped out of the set at the end of the Destroyer tour. So is that a sound check? I would love to know the details on that. If anyone does have the studio sheets or the recording details on that, it's bothered me for years. I've compared it with just about every soundboard recording from the period to see if anything matches up, and I've got nothing. So I don't think it was sourced from another show that was recorded, even though Eddie, of course, had come in late '76 to record stuff for them and was with them in Japan in March and April '77 recording. So that's one of the ones. But one thing that does bother me is, again, for me, talking about it, it's going to be revisionist, just because I wasn't there. I hadn't been a fan in the '70s and the albums leading up to Alive 2, so I just don't have that experience base. So I go off the details that I know and have learned. Detroit Rock City and Take Me. Those were the first two songs for the Love Gun tour. They were the first two songs performed in the set on the Rock and Roll Over tour. It just doesn't make any sense to me that they would step away from that and not have it. I mean, Ken, would you rather have something at least that's token legitimate rather than something that's completely fictitious to start off the Kiss Alive 2 album? Because both of those songs aren't on Alive. So
Exactly. No, I would have rather had, Take Me on there. If they did it that way, they should have, put it on there. It's the same thing with, why did they put, Tomorrow and Tonight in there? Why did they even re-record and put it? I mean, they didn't play that ever live, did they? As far as I know.
They never played that alive. The only songs are Hooligan and Got Love for Sale from
Yeah, so that's not a true representation of, of the concert from that standpoint. They should have kept with what they were going to do, I guess, with the the Japan live rock and roll party that they were going to do before they decided to do the live too. So
yeah,
but sorry, I was going to say something though that's kind of been making me scratch my head here. I have a bootleg show. I'm sure all of us have it too. Is that one on disc 2 on Kissology? Didn't they start with I Stole Your Love? The shows in '77. And then went to Take Me.
I think they did.
Yeah.
So
and Detroit Rock City was in the encore.
Right. Another thing about Detroit Rock City, and this goes back to what Mark was talking about too, is Detroit Rock City. That was the first time I heard Detroit Rock City is on Alive 2, and it sounded great to me. So when I finally bought, as I'm starting to buy the back catalog, and I bought Destroyer, and I heard Detroit Rock City on there, I'm like, what the heck? Why is it so soft? So it felt soft to me. It wasn't, raw or gritty. So yeah, that's something that bothered me. Is like, these are meant to, be played live, like Mark said.
Yeah, so Mark, they actually do start with I Stole Your Love on the Alive 2 tour after this album's released, but before then, Detroit Rock City and Take Me. So
it was.
Yeah.
Julian knows. She's got it.
No, I'm feverishly trying to fact check myself live here because, when we're talking about set lists and stuff like that compared to what is on the album, it is, kind of useful to be right, for a change. Okay, so getting back to the talking about the start of the sequence of the album is I'm looking at the Montreal Love Gun tour. Detroit, Take Me, Calling Dr. Love, Hooligan. But they're not going to give Peter Hooligan in place of Paul's Tomorrow and Tonight, are they? Even if that means they have to fake it and record it in the studio. So you just kind of get the feeling that that's not going to work. So go back to the set list of Alive 2. And the next two songs up are Ladies Room and Making Love. So 2 songs from Destroyer followed by 2 songs from Rock and Roll Over. Daniel, how do you like the stuff from Rock and Roll Over on Alive 2 and these songs specifically?
Well, I think you can never go wrong with a song from Rock and Roll Over. I mean, it sounds great on the studio album, and I still like Making Love and Calling Dr. Love, and I Want You on the Live 2 album. However, the improvement is less than when you heard songs from the first 3 albums on Live 1. So it wasn't really the same, kick when you heard them. But they still sound great. You can't fail with those kind of songs. Rock and Roll Over is probably, in my mind, the height of Kiss's career when it comes to studio albums. And I know I have at least 1 or maybe 2 with me in the show tonight on that one. But I still feel that they sound great. But the main thing for me on this album is the drum sound. I think it could... I think about Saint Anger when I hear Alive 2. I think it destroys a lot of the songs, unfortunately. Like Saint Anger, I listened to it once, but that drum sound is like the worst ever. And Alive 2 is a close second. No, it's not a close second, but it could have been better. And but you can't go wrong with playing Rock and Roll Over tunes live. You can't fail, really.
Talk about 2 drummers that get absolutely no respect whatsoever. Peter Criss and Lars Ulrich.
That's true.
Lars, I just have images of him with pots and pans just banging them together half the time, not even in time. He put a click track next to him and he looks at it like, why are you making me play out of time? But
the thing I don't like about him, sometimes it feels like Lars Ulrich, he thinks he's the lead singer, and that bugs me. He walks around sticking out his tongue thinking he's like a hybrid between Gene Simmons and James Hetfield. He's just a drummer. Deal with it.
Just a drummer. All right, Ken. So we're talking now Rock and Roll Over songs. They recorded Rock and Roll Over songs live twice in the space of a year, pretty much, because obviously Rock and Roll Over is essentially live. So how do you like those? And I'm going to ask each of you to pick your favorite song from each of the 3 studio albums that's represented on Alive, and which song from each of those albums that isn't on this that you think should have been. All right, is that enough to really confuse you while Ken talks? Ken?
Yeah, well, the Rock and Roll Over songs work pretty well for me. For instance, I spent most of my time playing side 2 of Alive 2 because, I kind of favored, not because it was Rock and Roll Over, but, Gene Simmons songs I've always kind of leaned towards. But Calling Dr. Love was one of my, basically my first favorite Kiss song. That was my first favorite song. Since then I've gone on like Black Diamond or whatever. But that was still a good representation of Rock and Roll Over. Hard Luck Woman, even though it was re-recorded, it sounded good in that environment. Of course, you're not going to be able to match all the acoustics that they had on the Rock and Roll Over album. But yeah, for the most part, Making Love, sheesh, man, that rocked like crazy, and it's a good song. So the Rock and Roll Over songs sound great.
Yeah, and I think for me, my taste is there's so little difference between Rock and Roll Over and Alive 2 of those songs, other than that audience track basically being put on top of them.
Yeah.
It works for me. The Love Gun stuff, on the other hand, which I've always said is a sister album to Dress to Kill in terms of how it's sonically kind of neutered. It's just a little flat for my tastes. They lost all kind of the organic rock aggression in that stuff. I think also comes across a lot better live on this album. Mark, I can't remember if I've already spoken with you about the Rock and Roll Over stuff. If not, start on that and then move on to the next 2 songs, if you would, please.
Okay. The rock and roll over stuff I think is strong, very strong. I've always loved that material, as you all know. It's my favorite Kiss record, period. And like Julian just said, I mean, the reason why they're strong is because they were essentially both a live recording, the rock and roll over sessions and this album, well, as live as we can possibly get it at, I suppose, at this point. But the one song, though, from that record that I think is vastly improved, actually, in my opinion, compared to the studio version, is Ladies' Room. For some reason, I think when I listen to Ladies' Room on the Rock and Roll Over album, it almost sounds like, and I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, like somebody played a practical joke on Paul and ran up to his amp before they started recording and turned his gain down on his amp, because he has such a really undistorted, like such a teeny tiny little guitar thing when it starts on the studio version. I'm like, why does it sound like that? Like, you know, and when they play it live on the Live 2, he has such a more ballsier guitar sound for that. That's why I kind of think that the Live 2 version is superior in that sense. And I also kind of think that Peter was kind of a little bit, you know, in the live situation, so he kind of attacked the drums a bit better on the live version for that song. I think that, you know, he really played well on that. I think Peter Criss, his performances weren't bad at all on the Live 2. I still think a Live 1 is superior than the Live 2, but he still had his fire going for this album as well. As far as Love Gun goes, there's, you know, fantastic songs are represented on this album, right? I mean, I Stole Your Love is just great. Love Gun is a great song, right? So they're well represented, and for me, I've never really had a problem with the studio versions of these songs. I've always kind of thought that Eddie Kramer wanted to maybe bring a little bit of elements of Destroyer into it, which I think was a little bit of a fault in my eyes. I think it should have just kept it the way he always did his records, kind of more rock and roll over-ish. But, you know, the songs that came off of Love Gun that are on Alive 2, I think that they still translated well, because those records weren't so overly, you know, moved to the left like a certain person did on a certain record.
Is Tomorrow and Tonight the right song to have on there from Love Gun?
No, but I think because of the way they approached the record and that they didn't want to have the same material over that they had from the first record, they were really left with no choice. I mean, they could have maybe used, you know, God Love for Sale or Almost Human, instead of that. But, you know, who knows what kind of, you know, muscles were being flexed as far as, no, I want my song on there instead sort of situation.
Yeah, so for people going on the Kiss cruise who may get a chance to do a Q&A with Paul Stanley, I would love to ask Paul, did you envisage Tomorrow and Tonight being a single for Alive 2? And, you know, I just wonder if, because, you know, the singles had not done that well on Love Gun, you know, even with Paola couldn't get those things up, you know, that maybe that's why that song, you know, why was that song picked to be on Alive 2 versus, sorry, you're really crackly there, Daniel, when you shout into the mic. Yeah.
Sorry.
Not too close.
Too close to the mic when you talk.
Yeah, and so I can understand why they wouldn't put Hooligan on, because Peter Criss gets no respect. And come on, that song live in concert is, well, it's okay, but it's hardly exciting. It doesn't have the same sort of energy as the rest of the material, so I get it, but, you know, that's just my thing. So, Daniel, let's go to you on there.
Yeah, I feel there's at least a couple of songs missing on this album. I would have loved to hear Do You Love Me? It's not on there, is it? No?
Nope, it's on the rare track listing misprint cover.
Okay, but that's a song that works really well live. Eric Singer's favorite track, and I think I would have loved to hear that one. And also a song from Rock and Roll Over that I feel would have worked fine is Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, with Gene on the vocals. I would love to see that. And I've always been a fan of Almost Human because it's just such a strange song. I would have loved to have that one as well. So, but the material represented on the album it's great. But you could have picked a few songs differently. And unfortunately, Beth became such a great hit. Otherwise, that's the one that stands out for me. It like brings down the tempo in the album. I would have got rid of that and brought on like Do You Love Me or Love 'Em, Leave 'Em. But it was a hit, so they had to have it on the album. But that's the stinker to me.
I've never considered that the flow from Tomorrow and Tonight, I Stole Your Love, followed by Beth. I mean, yeah, what a kind of slam on the brakes, and nice recovery with God of Thunder, because you're not going to have any Kiss song at that time to bring you back up. But but where else would you put Beth other than where it's supposed to be in the set, where people would kind of be expecting it to be? So from that kind of perspective, I really think that they should have been replicating a real concert more. The tail end of a concert at that time, is... well, unfortunately, Rock and Roll All Night, which they did not want to do, followed by Shout It Out Loud, Beth, and then, I think they could have kind of fiddled that around a little bit better in the sequence. I'm trying to think of what my next question would be about Alive 2, and, let's go
Pictures.
Pictures? Explain.
You mentioned yourself that you thought that the picture of Gene Simmons was the greatest one you've ever seen, almost. It wasn't used in a great way, I think. I would like to hear what you people think about you people out there. Paul Stanley, what do you think about the cover?
So what we think about what?
Okay. The cover.
The album cover.
The cover.
So, the album cover. Let's go. Album cover. Yeah.
Hold it up, Ken. Hold it up.
Again, so here it is. And you had your, on Kiss Alive, they had the whole band on there, more or less, in concert.
Yeah.
They could have done a fold out. They could have had reversed it, right? And maybe put this on the outside and had it fold over or something live. There's some actually good, Love Gun live shots that they recorded, or that stage studio shots that they've taken that were very cool looking, where they look like they're live on stage, which would have been good with the stairs going up and the whole bit. That would have been a good maybe cover with the Kiss logo. Yeah, this is more, I mean, they use like the military type, live font and that kind of thing. The I guess there's just four small pictures here. They could have maybe aligned things different too. So yeah, the cover is different. I guess it's kind of funny how you have a live and then 2 below it. It's kind of, to me, it's always got to be off-center to me. Kind of funny. Yeah, it could have been better cover. The back,
You know what though?
the inside's good.
But the thing that I have the problem with it in general is if you compare Alive, the first Alive, to that one, they had such a big dominant image of them on the front in a live stage setting, and then had such a smaller lettering of the Kiss and all that on top there. But now it's almost like they feel like just the name alone will sell, so that's why they probably made it so huge on there. And I think that they could have left it, that Kiss image. They should have just made it bigger, I think. And I think that's what's missing from it. They should have just had a real live stage setting photo, like they had it in a live on the front, and do what they did with the font. Maybe you couldn't use it as big, in retrospect. But I think that Kiss, being the live band that it is, and how much people were saying that they were the greatest live band ever, why wouldn't you have a big image of them on the front cover?
Exactly.
The inside of the album is like the best ever. You can never top the inside of the album. That's the best shot ever of a band live, in my opinion. And also the shot of at least Paul and Gene are
some of the greatest shots ever. So they had a lot of great shots. Yeah, that's the one that Ken is showing, the inside of the album. That I mean, couldn't they somehow have put that on the front instead of having letters on the front? You know, Kiss Alive 2. You know, that if they somehow could have incorporated the inside of the album on the front, it would have been the greatest cover ever, because that's the best picture of a live band ever. I have never seen a shot that tops that one.
It's always bored me, this cover. And particularly when you think back to the concept that, okay, we're not going to put any of the same songs on that were on the first one. We want this to be a continuation of the Kiss Live story. And then you put them down next to each other, Alive, beautiful, iconic cover, and then this big freaking Kiss logo and box office stencil block letters and tiny little pictures of the guys. I never liked that logo. I don't like the purple gradient. I think it should have been, if anything, the same logo that's in the on the dust sleeve for the Kiss Army logo in the Destroyer album, just red and a yellow outline. But I think it would have been better if they had kind of done a posed shot, like a updated one of the Alive cover of them, you know that classic picture of Ace kind of duck walking and holding his guitar in front of the drum riser. It's just him, and then you could have Gene and Paul to either sides doing their then iconic poses. Sam the Serpent, all squeezed down into 12 by 12, and Peter Criss up on, maybe his drums go up 4 feet so that you could see him on top of all of them, and with all the flames that you get in the gatefold. I think it, if they'd done an updated 1977 shot just like they posed in 75, then you could say it's more of a continuation of the album rather than something that I don't find it has any design qualities whatsoever that I can say, oh, that's groundbreaking, that's fun, that's exciting. None of that can be said about the Kiss Alive 2 cover until you open it up and, like Daniel said, pow, that gatefold punches you in the nuts. So, okay, everyone's nodding their head.
Yeah, well, but it's true. But I think the one thing though that I think also needs to be touched on as well is that while we have so many little negative comments to make about Alive 2, the one thing I think Alive 2 should be praised for is that I think the packaging and what came within it was vastly improved from Alive 1. I mean, you got the tattoos, you had a new booklet inside. There were things that got improved with this record release.
Yeah, if you're into merchandise, it was great. But a lot of people are into the music, and then it was a letdown. But we also need to talk about the final side of Alive 2. We haven't spoken about that one.
No.
The studio album, the studio songs.
All right, well, lead us into that, Daniel. Let's talk about the studio albums. The studio songs? Pardon me. What do you like? What are good points? What are high points? What shouldn't be on there? And what's your favorite?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty mainstream here. Rocket Ride, such a great track. One of my favorite Ace Frehley tracks ever. And to me, it feels like a throwaway on this album. I would have seen it on Love Gun. I envisioned, using the two best songs on that final side of Alive 2. To me, it's Rocket Ride and All American Man. Putting them on Love Gun and exiting Then She Kissed Me, and there's one or two more stinkers on that album. If you could have had those two on that album, because to me, Love Gun is the weakest by far album by Kiss, by the original Kiss, the original, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 albums. Love Gun is the weakest one. It was the start of the decline of Kiss. If they somehow could have used those two on Love Gun and left out two of the stinkers, that album would have been a lot better. But to me, I never really got, listening to a live album, getting into it, feeling like you're in a concert, and then, no, there's a few studio tracks here. Okay. Doesn't really work for me. So that side of the album, I never liked it. But Rocket Ride is such a great track, and I think it was a throwaway putting it there. It could have been a lead single of, any Kiss album. And Ace does it to this day, and it still sounds great. And All American Man is such a cool track. But the rest, you could have left those out for the Gene Simmons box set and have 153 songs on that one.
Ouch. Mark.
Yeah, I don't mind some of the songs. I mean, my favorite songs off of there have got to be Rocket Ride and Larger Than Life are my two songs I like on that. To be honest with you, because they were kind of, I guess, forced into doing this, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that they were the first to do this. I think I remember reading somewhere that there were other live albums that had this situation where they had studio tracks on the fourth side. I don't remember who they were, but I remember reading it somewhere. But I do think, though, that if it was up to me, I would have, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think I would have rather have had a fourth side that did have some of the songs from a live one on there instead of the studio tracks, in my opinion. Because I just think that some of those songs, while they're good, I mean, Rocket Ride is fantastic. And, like I said, I really like Larger Than Life as well. Yeah, they could have used it for another studio record. I thought that could have been wiser used in that situation, and we just could have had more good songs. Because I remember when you get the Casablanca singles, they have that live version of Nothing to Lose on there that's supposedly supposed to be from that era as well, from the Alive 2, and I guess it's not. But even songs like that, I would have rather have heard in a live capacity or whatever they were playing at that time. Like even another version of Firehouse from Alive 2, would have been cool. But like I said, I don't mind the studio songs, but I think I still would have rather have heard a fourth side of live material.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would really turn down it to be, use those 5 songs and the time allotted for them to make a full, proper live, so you got Rock and Roll All Night, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, maybe Deuce, or God knows, Do You Love Me, like was mentioned, get those songs onto this album instead. I always like these songs, and it's more because of how they sound. They sound like Love Gun should have sounded to me. They've got that kind of rawness that's coming back from the kind of rock and roll over era. So now we're back into what I like Kiss to sound like versus how they all got kind of polished away a little bit too much in the studio earlier in the year. Rocket Ride, without a doubt, is the one song that absolutely leaves me boggled. It was a top 40 single, and they never performed it live. This is the one thing that really bothers me with Kiss and its live history. Kiss has never performed this song with Ace.
2001, they did a snippet of it.
Well, a snippet doesn't cut it.
Okay.
And
they did it because they wanted to, tease Gene, it seemed like.
Yeah, what, and see if Gene could remember how to play it?
Didn't.
So, for me, you put it out as a single, and then you don't perform it on tour. It's just like, if there's these little boxes, I've got check marks next to the songs, and whether they perform them live properly. Okay, they tried this one acoustically. With Ace, if they ever do a final show with the original lineup, I hope that Rocket Ride is included in there, because that was his shining moment. Of course, when they put it out as a single, originally they weren't going to do any singles for Alive 2 until they got feedback from radio about what might go down well. Of course, it's got Tomorrow and Tonight as the frickin' B-side, doesn't it? You just can't let...
What does the Ace Frehley band want to play now?
As for the rest of the songs, All American Man is cool. Rockin' in the USA is shit. Can't stand that song. Never have liked it. Any Way You Want It is just a waste of time. It's, surely they had other songs they could have come up with. I know that Paul and Gene both like the Dave Clark 5. I I get it, but another cover after another dreadful cover after Then She Kissed Me, the previous album, no. Larger Than Life I like, so I've got 3 out of 5 that I do like, and that's good enough, I guess. So I mean, it's interesting to see if this was a second studio album for the year. I think it's a pretty good start, but pretty much the same as shut up.
Answer it, God damn it.
Not answering it. It's a telemarketer. Or, no, it's time to evacuate. Thank God. All right, Ken.
Well, here's the deal. The Kiss was overthink. They overthought this whole Alive 2 thing. And first of all, the model that they used for Alive 2 was what they were going to use for Kiss Alive, where they were going to have studio songs at the end of the record. That's what they were going to do originally with Alive. So they thought we thought about doing that back when we did Alive. So let's try it on Alive too. Well, it didn't really work, and plus they should have kept with the the original idea for Alive 2, which was the Tokyo thing, and yes, they should have kept all the songs probably recorded. Whatever they were playing at that time in concert, that's what they should have put on the album, basically. But the problem was, I think the Kiss marketing machine was in such high gear at that point that what they're doing, let's just put the last 3 albums on there, and let's try to get these last 3 records to sell as much as we can, get them to buy these records. That's part of it there. So that's my thoughts on that. Now, that's where the actual studio songs or the songs that they recorded, whatever, mobile, for this. I like most of them. I'm pretty much the same as you guys. I mean, All American Man, love that song. Rockin' in USA is okay. It's kind of a throwaway to me. It's not, that great of a song. Yeah. But Larger Than Life, man, I love that song. I mean, and the
cock
drums
is larger than life.
Yeah, and the drums, which now, people have said, well, is that really Peter Criss? I don't know. As far as we know, it's Peter Criss. No one has proved otherwise. And he's proved to me that he can do other styles of drumming, like he's done on Shock Me, for instance. And then Rocket Ride could be, well, it's one of Ace's best written songs, in my opinion. One of his best. And that's just a great song. And I agree with Julian that Shoot, they should have put that on Love Gun. I mean, that would have been great. He could have had 2 songs on Love Gun. Shock Me and Rocket Ride. So, and then Any Way You Want It is another, Kiss doing a cover tune, and they don't need to do that. They could have.
What's your favorite Kiss cover tune? God Gave Rock and Roll to You is mine.
I'd have to. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. That's probably the best one.
It's a good cover.
Yeah.
Mine's King of the Nighttime World.
Oh, okay.
Good one as well.
We never, but you know what? It's I guess, yeah. I guess you're right. That's pretty good too. It's an more unknown, I guess, song than. Well, God Gave Rock and Roll to You is probably pretty unknown too. Argent. I don't think it did that well originally anyway. So those are my thoughts. While they probably shouldn't have done the studio stuff, in my opinion, but maybe even saved it for the next album. Dynasty or something.
They needed it for the next album.
Instead of going into the doing the solo albums, just going new album and throw some of those songs on there. So
no choice. They were already committed. Even before they did Love Gun, they were committed to what they were going to be doing. So the singles. What do you think of Shout It Out Loud as being the first single from this album? Good choice, bad choice? What would have been your choice, Mark?
I think I would have probably preferred something a little... I don't know. I'm not going to say more rock and rollish because obviously Shout It Out Loud is a pretty good rock song. That's more of like an anthem-y song. I would have liked to have heard them release the I Stole Your Love as a single. I think that would have been really strong. I think that was a great version of it on there, and I think that would have been a great A-side.
Backed with, what would be your B-side then? Would you have gone with, one of the new tracks as a B-side, or would you have done like they did and cross-promote the Alive album, just so that no one forgets that Kiss did Alive?
That was interesting that they did that, but I think Alive did well enough at that point. I don't think they really needed to remind people of it. I think that was their introduction for some people to Kiss, so I think that's pretty fresh in people's mind. I think that one of the studio tracks would have been maybe an interesting idea, maybe backed it with Rocket Ride, although who knows if they would have allowed to have Ace on a single like that. But I think that would have been my choice. I Stole Your Love and Rocket Ride.
Yeah, I think going into Kiss, if Paul had the A side, Gene would have been on the B side. So I love the idea of I Stole Your Love as the single, and I would B side it with Larger Than Life, since Gene's going to get that. Ken, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think I know what they're doing here because Rock and Roll Night, they tried it as a single on Just to Kill. It didn't work. And that version didn't even have a guitar solo in it, of course. But then the live version is the one that got airplay and did pretty good. So I think they're going for the same type of thing as Shout It Out Loud didn't make it off a Destroyer, didn't really do much. So they thought, well, let's try again, just like Rock and Roll Over. Maybe we'll have a hit out of it. And I'm okay with it. That idea. Shout Out Loud works for me. As for other singles on here, I mean, you already had Calling Dr. Love did pretty well on the charts. Also, Christine 16 did pretty well on the charts. So I don't know if they would take another stab at Love Gun or something like that. It may have worked, possibly. That would have been maybe a choice for me.
Good thoughts, Daniel.
I agree with Mark. I Still Love is the one to go with. Just such a great track and such a great version. I would have gone with that one. I still Shout It Out Loud. They tried that like 20 years later with the reunion tour when they released that. I don't know what. I almost don't remember the name. You Want the Best, You Got the Best.
Yeah.
And they released Shout It Out Loud as a live single. That was a great version, but it's so typical Kiss, kind of lazy. Well, we did this 20 years ago. Let's do it again. Release Shout Out Loud as a single.
It's the third time.
Yeah. But
third time's
to me,
charm.
yeah, exactly. I Still Your Love. That's a kick-ass version. They should have released that one.
The thing that boggles the mind is that they were even thinking about releasing Any Way You Want It as the third single. And
just crazy.
That's just.
When I saw those memos for the first time, I'm like, really?
Tells you what their thinking was at the time. It was kind of going.
Yeah, so thank goodness you got Strutter 78 instead. I mean, God, it really is. But Kiss Alive 2, I think, does stand the test of time very well. We've critiqued it a bit, but that doesn't mean that it's not still a very important album in the band's catalog. I mean, it's one of their few legitimately double platinum certified albums in the United States. I've got shipment figures here. Roughly 2.8 million copies had been shipped by June 79, 304,000 in the sound scan period through March 2012. So that's 5 years ago since I last managed to get an update of the SoundScan figures. I don't think it's probably shifted 20,000 a year since then, so I'd put it under 400. But that's over 3.1 million copies shipped. So that's very respectable. You can understand why with Greatest Kiss they did the that Tiger Stadium live version of Shout Out Loud. Why if you're replicating the Alive 2 tour, well, Alive 2, your single was Shout It Out Loud, so it kind of ties that part of Kiss back together. What would you like to see if Kiss had, or Universal more appropriately, let's not just blame Gene and Paul all the time for everything.
Yeah, Universal.
If Kiss did a deluxe edition of Alive 2, and you could have pretty much anything you wanted, what would you want them to do with this album? Would you want them to remix and remaster and get rid of that annoying track, audience track? How would you like them to treat you, Daniel?
There's a lot to do. For example, as you mentioned, the audience track, they need to do something about that. They need to remove, to me, I would like to see them remove the fourth side and adding a few more live tunes. And to me, there's clearly at least one of each album that you could add. Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, Almost Human, Do You Love Me, maybe a few others. And I would just like the fourth side to disappear. I never liked that one. Even though I love Rocket Line, it like, how do you say it in English? It diminishes, the flow of the album. Mm-hmm. You're into the live experience, you're into it, and then Shout It Out Loud ends, and then the first chord of All American Man starts, and it's a great chord in any other setting. But in this setting, it doesn't really work. It's like, okay, that's the end of it. What's this? And to me, it doesn't work. I would just get rid of the fourth side and add 5 more tracks. And I'm sure you can find 2 more good tracks than Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, Almost Human, and Do You Love Me. There's at least 2 more tracks that you could find if you looked through the archives. So I would make it a real live album and remove the fourth side. I was never a fan of including fourth side just to be able to release a new song. This is about the live experience. Imagine if you would have another side on a live one with, non-live tracks. It would just decrease the value of the product. You don't need that on a live album. A live album is supposed to put you in the seats. You're supposed to feel like you're in the concert, that you're there, that you're watching the show. So remove that fourth side and include a few more songs, and that would be the Alive 2 remastered or redone version that I would like to see.
Nicely put, Ken.
Well, I would go with going back to the rock and roll party, in Tokyo thing. I would include that. I would include all the shows that they used, if LA Forum or there's other ones too that they used for this recording. Plus, so I would have had those in full, and then maybe the original one, of course, remastered or remixed, and bring down that crowd noise, or even get rid of it and use whatever crowd noise was picked up. That's probably enough anyway. I don't need to have fake crowd noise pumped in. It's kind of like watching, on TV when it can get annoying. You watch a comedy series and you have the laugh track going. It's like, why are they laughing? That was not funny. So that kind of thing, you don't need it, and it becomes annoying after a while. So yeah, that, and then also put a DVD or Blu-ray of a show, at least one of the shows, full show.
Largo,
which would be there you go. Oh yeah, that's a great one and a great addition to it. Plus maybe, and then commentary, maybe even Eddie Kramer or whoever and the band. If you can get any of the band to commentary on that, would be a great package, and make a box set out of it.
Exactly. Mark, are we gone to you?
No.
Okay.
Well, basically, I think what Ken said is pretty much what I was thinking. Same thing. I mean, I agree with ditching side 4, make it into a proper full concert. In this day and age where lots of bands that I love have had their albums redone and repackaged and done by interesting people, like how King Crimson have done their stuff with Stephen Wilson, so have Gentle Giant and other bands like that. When the day come when we'll finally see a 5-1 mix of a Kiss record, Would Alive 2 be one to do? Who knows? It'd be interesting to maybe get it remixed, tame the audience a bit, and maybe put that in 5-1 around, make you feel like you're sitting right in the middle of a concert. That'd be interesting. And I agree. Bring the rock and roll party. Make that maybe the bonus disc audio-wise, and end it with a Blu-ray or DVD version of one of those shows, like Largo there, like how Julian said. And I think you have a pretty strong repackaging of a record that KISS fans will buy. And I'd still always boggled. I know we went through this 100,000 times, so I'm not going to go through it again, but it just still boggles me that Universal won't loosen the purse strings and let them do something like this.
Yeah, I want a box set like a Super Alive 2, that you get all those master recordings that were done, regardless of how screwed up they may be. Just mix them, master them, and put them on a CD for all 3 nights that they recorded. I want the originally intended rock and roll party in Japan of one of those versions. Put it out as a single, do some nice artwork for it. And then I want Alive 2 to be given the rebuild treatment. When they say that they didn't want to replicate any of the songs that had appeared on Alive 2, it doesn't make any sense. There are only 3 songs from Alive that were still even in the set, and that is Firehouse, Black Diamond, and Rock and Roll All Night. That is all that was performed on the tour on Love Gun. Put those songs back into the set, and if we're going to build a fake set, at least base it on what the actual performance order was, and then stick in King of the Nighttime World somewhere appropriately, probably at the top, where they were, kind of performing by then. And I'm just actually on the LA shows, and they did start off with I Stole Your Love on that one, which just goes to show, fuck. so build it, yeah. Oh well, build it around what was the real sets done, and insert those songs back in. Insert Take Me, Hooligan, and Do You Love Me back into the set where they belong. Keep Tomorrow and Tonight. They used it, they recorded it, they worked on it, so fine. To find a place for it to sit, but just re-envisage Alive 2 with a decent audio track, with maybe fix those drum sounds that. Daniel, was it you or was it Mark who commented on that you didn't, the St. Anger drums? It was you, Daniel.
I think it was me.
It was you. So that is what I would do. And then you've got like a 6 CD and 1 Blu-ray, and I love that Largo show. It really is super KISS. It's KISS at their height. It's a great looking show. Yes, it's imperfect and missing some bits, but I don't know what the original source material is on that, so.
I think you guys have a lot of great ideas, but you're into extra everything. To me, it was just like the Alive 2 album sounding great, and without the studio versions. Remove those, put in the songs that are missing, and remaster the album, and you will have a great live record. And all this other stuff about Blu-rays and all of the stuff, we've seen most of it already. So, but
Yeah, and the minimalist approach would be perfectly fine. But if you're starting to tweak it in any way, the audience, why not? And get rid of those extra 5 studio songs and cut off any way you want it, and just put it in as a bonus 7-inch single. So that's kind of my thoughts. So let's wrap up this show with some final thoughts on Alive 2, and just where does it sit for you? For me, it's an important part of the catalog, but not a critical part of the catalog. There are better live albums that the band have done. I'm more likely to go to Alive, but it makes sense in terms of where they were at and where they were going in 1977 that it exists. So it's not one that will ever not be in my collection. It's just more likely if I want to listen to live KISS, I'm going to reach for Alive, or I'm going to reach for MTV Unplugged. Mark, your wrap up.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of the same for me. I mean, Alive 2 isn't exactly the bottom of the barrel for me overall, but it's definitely not my first go-to when I want to listen to a live record. So funny enough, I almost have as many variation copies of Alive 2 as I do Alive right now, which is kind of surprising, but it has become more of a record that I listen to now than I did before. Maybe just because I've been collecting so many different ones of it, I always have a habit of listening to them top to bottom. So maybe it's grown on me a little bit, but it'll never replace a live one for me.
Ken?
Yeah, well, Alive 2 is sentimental favorite of mine. I understand, and I know it's not the best live record that Kiss has done. Alive and and Unplugged are the two best performances of Kiss live. So Alive 2 comes my third, right behind those first two, and then to me, I have a big drop off with like Alive 3 and so on. It's a big drop off after that.
Yep. All right, Daniel, you get the final word since we've waited so long to have you back on the show.
Well, I don't know if I have a lot to add, but to me, Alive 1 is perfect. Alive 2 isn't. No. Alive 2 is a mishmash. I enjoy some of the songs. It doesn't work as a live concert. The fourth side shouldn't be on there. And but I understand why they released it. It was the perfect move, I guess, at the time. And it shipped, I don't know, almost close to 3-4 million copies or something. And it was a success. But it didn't really capture Kiss at the height of the power somehow. Kiss was, if you look at concerts from 77, 78, it's almost incredible. I mean, there isn't a live band out there today that can match those shows, to me. They were awesome. And unfortunately, they couldn't capture it on a live record. Whilst you listen to Alive 1 and Kiss were just getting started, and they somehow managed to capture, the sound live, and it almost sounded better on record than live. But Alive 2 was kind of a letdown, so I prefer bootlegs, live videos, and that sort of stuff instead of Alive 2. But it's still, I understand why they released it, and it has an important piece of history, But it could have been better.
Yep. And I think one thing that kind of does prove that is the recently surfaced recordings to Fort Worth from the last shows of the Love Gun tour. They are absolutely bombastic. That is how I like to hear Kiss sound and feel listening to them live. And maybe it's just because they're still new to me that I'm just kind of in awe of how aggressive they sound, and the overall sound captured is perfect. All right, so that's that is a tribute to Alive 2, because again, none of us have not recognized its importance in the catalog. As it reaches 40 years old, there's a lot of albums that are celebrating their anniversaries this year, and the one person who I haven't mentioned is obviously Eddie Balandis, who does the iconic introduction to this album, who passed away this week 6 years ago. So gone another member of the Kiss Army many years ago, so it's almost appropriate that he passed on around the time that this album came out, of which he played a part, even if Gene had to re-record part of that intro because it didn't sound quite right. So there we are. Wherever you listen to the show, whether it's on the KissFAQ, on Facebook, on iTunes, if you want to leave us a review, please do. We always like honest opinions. But chime in. What are your favorite memories of Alive 2, where it fits into your life as a Kiss fan? What are the things that you like, the things you don't like, and what would you like to have seen them do? And if you'd like them to do a deluxe edition, what would you like to see? But for now, from Mark, from Daniel, from Ken and myself, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final, there are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.